But I want to start off with what I would say are pretty chilling revelations that have come out of an affidavit surrounding the arrest warrant for the individual who's been charged with quadruple murder of the University of Idaho students. As you guys well know, I have been following this case aggressively ever since this murder happened back in November, and we didn't know who was responsible for it. There's been an individual arrested. His name is Brian Koberger, and he is a 28-year-old who was a teacher's assistant in Washington State, just up the road from the University of Idaho, across the border in Washington. And he has been charged with the quadruple murder. Some of these details are chilling. I'm reading from an article by Bobby Barak, one of our talented writers at Outkick, that is up right now, and I just want to tell you some of the details. The roommate, remember there were 4 people murdered in this house, 3 girls and one of the boyfriends, and then there were 2 girls who were left unharmed on the lower floor, the first floor of this house. One of those roommates woke. She thought, and I'm reading from Outkick, which is from the affidavit that was filed in regards to this arrest. The roommate awoke by what she thought was the sound of one of her roommates playing with a dog on the 3rd floor. A short time later, she heard what she thought was that roommate saying, "There's someone here." She then opened the door, heard crying coming from one of the roommates' rooms, and a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She then opened her door again around 4:17 in the morning and, quote, saw a figure clad in black with a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. The male walked past her as she stood in what she described as a frozen shock phase. This is at 4:17 in the morning. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Investigators found a leather knife sheath at the crime scene, which contained the suspect's DNA. The sheath was left behind. The cell phone was tracked back to the house after the murders. The phone appeared near the home on November 13th between 9:12 and 9:21 a.m., 6 hours after the attack. Cell phone pings also show the phone was in the area of the murders at least 12 times before the morning of the killings. This guy who was arrested is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder. There also is a report that he was pulled over in Indiana at the request of the FBI that was involved in this case by an Indiana state trooper because they wanted to see whether or not Koberger had any injuries to his hands as a result of potentially this murder. The other thing that's significant here is this individual evidently turned off his cell phone from 2:57 a.m. until around 5:30 a.m. and was driving this white Hyundai Elantra that authorities said they were looking for. But I would say the biggest revelation by far coming out of this case is that there was an eyewitness. One of the roommates that night heard noise that she woke her up and then came, in her recollection, face to face with this killer. Now, that's to me the part of this story that is so chilling in nature. And again, one of the things that you learn when you are in the legal proceeding, when you get your law license, when you're involved in any kind of cases, is there's the idea of the reasonable man or the reasonable woman. Everybody behaves differently. And oftentimes we say, okay, what would a reasonable man or reasonable woman in that situation have done? And what I can't get past based on this revelation, if at 4:17 a.m., after hearing strange sounds that woke you up upstairs, a man you did not recognize came downstairs, dressed all in black, also with a black mask on his face. And let me just say this. I don't think it's coincidental that crime has gone up as we have made masking commonplace, right? Because in an ordinary context, if I were talking to you in 2019 and I said, hey, there was a strange guy walking around and he had a mask on, all of you would say, oh my God, you got to call the police immediately, because why would you be wearing a mask otherwise? Unfortunately, the left wing in this country has so normalized mask wearing that it's not uncommon for people to be wearing a mask and behaving otherwise in a normal fashion. So I will say that factors in here as well. But if you saw a man you didn't know in your residence at 4:17 a.m. wearing all black with a black mask on too, and you say that you were startled and you froze, at a minimum, maybe you don't call the police because this is a party house, and for those of us who were in college, might not have been uncommon for guys or girls in their 20s to be leaving or entering the house at 4 a.m. in a way that otherwise would be strange, right? So maybe you don't call the police because you're not that stunned that a guy you didn't know, given that there's a bunch of girls there, it's a party house. Maybe you're not that stunned. But at a minimum, wouldn't you walk upstairs once that person left, maybe lock the door behind him, and check on your roommates at that point in time? Just like stick your head in the door and make sure they're okay. Maybe she did that. But this part of the story doesn't ring true. It also is strange to me, on behalf of the killer, assuming he saw her, he had just killed 4 people, and now there is theoretically an eyewitness to his murders. Wouldn't you think, hey, maybe I should kill her too? Maybe you didn't see her? But this is strange revelations here. I also wonder, and again, I'm not an expert on police work, certainly. I'm surprised that the fact that there was an eyewitness didn't come out before now. Now, maybe they were afraid if they put out news that she was an eyewitness, that it would put her in peril. Maybe they really thought that he didn't know that he had been seen, and they didn't want him to know that they knew maybe what he looked like. But I would think this is evidence that would have been really important. Why did he go back the next morning? Maybe he was really interested in the crime scene and wanted to celebrate. Maybe he wanted to know whether or not the police had been called. Maybe he left something behind that he wanted to go pick up in his rush to leave the scene of the crime. I'm really intrigued by that choice on his behalf. And also, I can't stop thinking about the fact that this guy was involved in going to teach, and everything that surrounds this story in general is pretty wild. So these are the latest revelations. I'm glad that we have caught someone. As you guys well know, I've spent a lot of time thinking about all of these details. And so that is positive news, assuming that this guy is in fact guilty. And of course, as always, he deserves a presumption of innocence. Maybe he has a really good defense and it was not actually him. But that is all of the latest on the arrest coming out of the University of Delaware quadruple murders and the revelations inside of the affidavit surrounding the quadruple murder charges.